everybody, and welcome back to a very biased opinions review of the Oxford United season. Who is more qualified than me to judge and review professional footballers and managers? Probably no one, but as you can see, I have brought in a ringer. I have brought in some hired help. The man that we affectionately like to call on this channel Big Bobby Big Balls, or for the purpose of this video, maybe we should just call him Robert. Robert is here. How are you doing? Have you recovered after that scintillating Doncaster game?
Well, when you watch a match as exciting as that, you do need a couple of days afterwards to sort of unwind and sort of calm down and sort of get your pulse rate down a little bit now. I mean, when we did that video on Saturday, oh my God, it was just racing.
I imagine there's a few Oxford players on holiday at the moment that are probably just like, what, I played a game against Doncaster? I don't remember that.
Around about the 80th minute, you could probably see them thinking, so tomorrow morning we're going to have to be at Terminal 5 by 9:30.
And that's kind of going to sum up this video, folks. We'll try and keep it on a straight and narrow narrative and take you through a journey through the season, but we'll probably go sidetracked and talk about all manner of weird and wonderful things, which is absolutely fine. But before we get into this, Robert, first of all, are you ready?
I am.
And
so I'm just putting my notes up in front of me so I can know what I'm talking about.
And are you ready to talk about what can only be described as a horrific disgrace of a season? Have you ever known a worse season as an Oxford fan?
Well, me and you have been supporting Oxford United for a very long time now. And when you count the multiple relegations and going out into the conference and going around and losing to the dog and duck sides, this was by far the worst season we've ever seen in our entire lives.
What was that season we went down with like 100 goals conceded?
Oh, that was the Kemp season, wasn't it? Just before the millennium. Oh my God, that was a bad one.
Go back and watch highlights of that one. Anyone moaning about this season, that was a pretty bad one. All we had to do was not lose 5-0 on the final day to not concede 100 goals, and that's exactly what we did.
Oh my God.
Right, final thing before we jump into it, I just want to give a couple of shout-outs. Over the last couple of games that I went to against Rotherham and Doncaster, there were some people that I met that are subscribers to the channel, so thank you very much. I was very stupid and didn't get the names of the people in the Rotherham games, but there were 3 of you in total, so thank you. That was great to meet you. Great, thanks for saying that you subscribe to the channel and watch any of my videos. It is quite remarkable, really. And I did remember the name of the lad I met on Saturday. That was Ollie, outside in the car park, and we both had a brief chat. We both got the score wrong, so that's kind of par for the course for me with predictions. But yeah, again, great to meet you, Ollie. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for subscribing. And that is all the hot dogging and grandstanding out of the way. Let's have a look at this season of 2021-22. If you can take your mind back to August, Robert, which started obviously with a 1-1 draw against Cambridge. A lot of wonderful foreshadowing in that game for what the season was about to happen, with Oxford dominating, creating loads of chances, couldn't score more than one, and then getting pegged back. Surprise, surprise, where have we seen that one before? But just if you can try and get into it and remember, what was your view on what the squad was? I mean, the only real departure in the summer was Atkinson, I believe, going to Bristol City. I can't really remember any more. But we had Billy Bowden came in. We actually signed Marcus McGuane, which we did quite a long time ago, but he was technically a signing for the summer. Ryan Williams came in and Steve Seddon as well. What was your views, Robert, on what your thoughts on how the season was going to go all the way back in August? Were you hopeful or not so much?
Well, you thought we'd be getting in near around the playoffs. I mean, I think that was the aim at the start of the season. And you looked at the side we got together, and on paper, everyone looked a decent signing, and you couldn't really sort of find faults. You thought we might be a bit light up front, but you were sort of thinking, we could have a chance for the playoffs. So, yeah, and, you were reasonably optimistic, but by the same time, this league we're in at the moment is incredibly difficult. There are a lot of sides over there who feel it's their right to be out of this league.
Absolutely. No, yeah. And I think that you dressed on it when you looked at the squad. There were a couple of glaring weaknesses, and that was the fact that we didn't really have anyone. If Taylor would have got injured, we would have been absolutely screwed up front. I don't think anyone, including Carl Robinson, really saw Adji and Winnell as like real first choice strikers that could come in and do a great job. And we were also very limited of anyone who could play left back.
Yeah,
Seddon was
that was
there.
that felt like a glaring error. That.
Yeah, and there was really no one else that could really come in and do that role, and so it left us feeling whenever there was a case where we had to shuffle it around, it was a little bit of square pegs in round holes. But that's going to be the same with probably a lot of squads up and down League One, I would imagine. But I must say, in a video that never got released on Very Biased Opinions, I actually had Oxford finishing, I think, 10th.
Really?
And it wasn't the fact that I thought the squad was really bad. It was more based on the fact of I didn't think we'd really improved it significantly, and we were a bit fortunate the season before to kind of sneak up on the rails and get in on the last day. And more to the point of a lot of sides looked really good in League One, and I was really expecting a lot more from the likes of Ipswich. I was expecting a lot more from the likes of Charlton and Lincoln as well. Actually, I thought we're going to do a lot better this season than what they eventually did. So that was just why. But when you make season predictions, it's like bloody, you're literally almost like creating a rod for your own back, because you're never going to you're going to get the majority of it wrong.
Well, if you look the start of every season, you look at the Premiership predictions before it. Literally everyone was tipping it as a four-team title race between the Manchester clubs, Liverpool and Chelsea.
Yep.
Everyone thought, especially when Manchester United signed Ronaldo, that was going to be the difference. Now all of a sudden, Manchester United are scratching around about 7th, and everyone's sort of looking about what went wrong. No one saw that coming. It's just impossible.
Yeah, exactly. And also, with a lot of people thought Lukaku was going to be just like the cherry on top of the cake for Chelsea, but that hasn't obviously been the case. So, let's have a look at these. I've broken it down into kind of quarters and looked at the first 12 games of the season. Obviously, we said it started with a 1-1 draw, but it was a patchy start for Oxford. We had some good results in there. There's a couple of real ones, eye-catching ones. There's really good results, but we had 4 defeats in the first 12 games. We had 5 wins, and we had 1, 2, 3. My maths is pretty poor. And we had 3 draws. There we go. Somehow worked that out. But is there anything out of those games that are on the screen there, Rob? Are there anything that jumped out to you there as ones where you thought anything memorable or anything you remember anything about?
Well, especially out of the top few matches. Like I say, it was actually quite a good start by Oxford standards, in the sense that in previous seasons we've started shoddily. It's taken us about 3 or 4 games to get the first win, and we've really started quite slowly. This time we started, in comparison, we actually went much quicker. First game of the season was a bit disappointing. We get a win over Charlton, and we get a win over Crewe. So things start to, you're suddenly starting to improve. It starts to look good. It was a decent start to season, nothing exceptional, but compared to previous seasons, that's good.
Do you know, I completely forgot about that. I completely forgot about how bad we usually start seasons, and I'm just looking at this and thinking it was a bit of a kind of an up and down start. But yeah, I remember that now. Absolutely, everyone talking comparatively towards normal Robinson standards, this was a bloody good start. Just a couple of games, obviously, I want to highlight. There was a defeat in there to AFC Wimbledon, which really kind of mirrored the defeat we had at the end of the season before, without James Henry getting a red card, obviously. But we take the lead through Mark Sykes, and then we kind of look quite comfortable in the game, and then inexplicably we just capitulate. And it was maybe an early sign into what happened quite a few times this season, where Oxford kind of went into panic mode, couldn't really handle it, and Wimbledon just bombarded us with balls into the box and ended up beating us relatively comfortably 3-1, and that really made Oxford feel a bit lightweight. But when you look back at where Wimbledon finished, you're really thinking that was a bad one. That was a bad one. That really, we shouldn't really be getting beat 3-1 to Wimbledon. But then on the flip side, I have to say one of the highlights of the season is that Sheffield Wednesday win away. I think that was the first away win of the season. At that time, it was very much can we win away? Can we get a win over a big scalp? And I remember going to the game and I thought Oxford played really well. I thought Oxford dominated the first half. Second half, Wednesday did come back at them a bit, but then when it did get 1-1, Oxford kicked on again. And I felt, if anything, 1-1 would have been a bit of a disappointing result, because I thought Oxford did enough to win it, and then James Henry stepped up with unbelievable scenes in the away end when he scored that winner. It was a really good, solid win away from home for Oxford, and that really made me think that this is a bit of a side that is a bit better than what we saw the season before.
Yeah, and I remember you talking about it after the game. Barry Bannon, the consensus being, why on earth is he playing in this league? This is someone this is someone far could be playing at a much higher level. But it's interesting if you look at it now. Back then we were reading sort of comments from like the Sheffield Wednesday fans, and they were talking about, this is great, this is an embarrassment. But ultimately, Wednesday went on to have a good season, and there weren't many sides around us who we got good results against, really, in comparison. I was sort of looking at a quick list here at the moment. That's kind of our weakness areas. When we beat Sheffield Wednesday, obviously we go and beat Milton Keynes Dons later on in the season. But I think that's one of the things that caught us when we went up against people on our level, or maybe even slightly above. We sometimes really did look like we were the cup team going to the big boys and trying to sort of looking a bit nervous.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I was going to actually say that as well. As one of the things I really didn't want to. We didn't see it in that Wednesday game, and it was something I didn't want. I didn't want Oxford to sort of go there and act like an inferior side. Like for us as fans, it was a great day out to go to this, off the field where Sheffield Wednesday are a much bigger club than Oxford United. Yeah. The stadium is huge, the history of the club is huge, and the players are obviously on a lot of those players are paid a lot more money than Oxford players. But I didn't want to go there and be like an inferiority complex and be like we're little Oxford playing against the big boys. I wanted it to be like one where Oxford kind of stood shoulder to shoulder with them and showed them that we are as good and we're on that level. And they did that day, but you're absolutely right. And probably the next game against Plymouth, where we lost 3-1, which ends this kind of 12 games run, was a kind of an idea of what you talked about, really, is when we went up against the side on our level and we just kind of come up second best.
Yeah. I think touching on it, that seems to be one of the themes of the season, though, is that our resilience is that when things went well, we were sort of a very good side. One of the games I was going to mention, what you were to point out, was the match that happened a little bit later on in the season. Just bear with me a second whilst I just go and get the notes up. It's Gillingham 2, Oxford 7. That was when Oxford were having their little purple patch at the moment, when everything was working right for us. And, that was an amazing game in terms of sort of like Cameron Brannigan gets 4 penalties in the match. It makes national news. We're all sort of they're laughing about it on Soccer Saturday and all the rest of it. But it was also the time when Oxford seemed to be really in their pomp. We seemed to be playing with confidence. We were getting goals. We were proving forward. But a lot of times this season we've had a glass jaw. You sort of feel like how many times this season have we taken the lead and been pegged back? That's happened too much.
I think we must be the worst for like dropping points from a winning position, because there was even at that very early start of the season, it was like every game we were taking the lead. And quite often we wouldn't get that. It was, we wouldn't score the second goal in the game, if you know what I mean. After that, then we got into like an 11-game run, which took us up to the halfway point. And this was arguably Oxford's best, it probably was Oxford's best period of the season. In that 11 games, we only lost one game, and that was a 3-2 defeat to Wigan, which was very much marred by the fact that we had a lot of players out with COVID.
Yeah.
And but and that was a very close game. We could have really got a draw out, but that was a really long run, run where Oxford had. We're not losing many games, and it took us up to 5th in the league at the halfway point. And in that kind of 11-game stretch there, we won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think we won 7. We drew 3, and we only lost the 1. And I think Oxford did show quite a bit of resilience in that little period you're talking about there. You talked about the glass jaw, but I think this little period here was when Oxford did kind of like get some results where we sort of dug in and did well. Yeah. Like we had the results against Ipswich, results against Sunderland, Rotherham at home, which is obviously one which again was another COVID one. And you look at the team that played that day, and we got this 0-0 draw, which felt very much like a win. Yeah. And I think that game, that game was really almost something that really kind of united the Oxford fans and the players quite a lot that season. That one game where we saw all the Oxford were really stretched back to the wall. We hardly had anyone on the bench. We had Steve Seddon playing centre back, Connor Truman in goal. Yet we played like a side that went on to get promoted. We drew 0-0 with them, rode our luck, but we really, really put in a lot of effort. And I think that the fans have really been with Oxford a lot like this season. And I think results like that go a long way to why there is such a good connection between this Oxford set of players and the fans.
I would also mention something. When we come back from the football on Saturday, we listened to a brief bit about on Radio Oxford, and they're talking about Carl Robinson, and they were talking about the connection that they were sort of predicting, wondering whether he would leave in the summer. You know, would he sort of be tempted to go somewhere bigger? And the consensus seemed to be that he is, you know, he's a big fish where he is at the moment and won't want to move. But you look at what someone mentioned, a lot of the stuff that he does. Now, still not Carl Robinson's biggest fan. There's still times when I find him quite irritating in his comments. But during the pandemic, he was ringing up Oxford United fans who are by themselves. He went to an Oxford United fan's funeral. Didn't have to go. They could quite easily just, sent best wishes or, sent their condolences. But he went, and he sort of put himself out to do it. And you do get the impression in the club, there is a good sort of sense of like, he's trying to make a community spirit with there as well. And he just, how they handled things regarding Mickey Lewis and Joey Beauchamp tragically passing away. He's handled those situations well. And those are times that this is when something where Carl Robinson does help, but he does sort of create almost like this sort of family type relationship between us and the players. Because we do have seen managers in the past who haven't given a toss. Literally, this is just a job. As soon as they've clocked out, they couldn't care less about us. You don't get that impression with Robinson.
No, not at all. I think, but does the stuff that how much does that weigh up though? That's the only thing I'm thinking of. Because it's a results-based business, and ultimately it's all about how you do on the pitch. And so, how much does the kind of off the field stuff that Robinson does for the community, and he does do a lot of good stuff, and he always speaks well about Oxford United and the history of the club, and he clearly knows a lot about it. But does that, it's weird to say, like, should that absolve him from any blame, or does that give him any credit in the bank if we're on a bad run or anything like that? Or
it probably doesn't. I mean, goes back to the Premiership for a second there. Jurgen Klopp has got a ton of credit in the bank, yet Liverpool lost like 6 in a row. There would probably be Liverpool fans thinking, have we come to an end of it? And there is an element of that. I mean, for all the good work that Carl Robinson has done, if an absolute bastard comes in and he gets us promotion, we might sort of take that. But I saw a thing like saying, by the same token, it helps, and it does buy him some credit as well. You do, when he does something well, you do sort of want to sort of feel, give him a bit more of a chance. Like we have sort of seen comments this season thinking, has Robinson taken this club as far as they come? Yet neither one of us would say we think Carl Robinson should leave. And I would say our view is probably quite shared amongst the Oxford United fans. I mean, maybe you'll see comments below of people saying, no, he's a chance and we need to get rid of him. But I would think most Oxford United fans are well on his side.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And again, usually it's the ones that don't want him are the ones that are going to speak out and put comments down the thing. And a lot of it, I think, comes out of knee-jerk reactions. You lose games of football, you're pissed off. You want a smoking gun. You want someone to blame. You want a fall guy. You want an instant, quick fix. And it isn't, it isn't going to be like that. And I think you need to remember times where, and certainly in the most recent time, is when Michael Appleton left. No fault of him, really. No bad blood between him and the club. He left because Leicester were going to offer him a shed load of money. Pep Platek came in, and in a very short space of time, all what Michael Appleton had built got knocked down and taken away, and looked like we were facing we were in a relegation battle until Robinson came in, the manager with a wow factor, to steady the ship in a way. So you almost got to be a little bit careful about wanting change for change's sake. There isn't really a need. There isn't really a need to kind of break everything down and destroy everything that Carl Robinson has built. And I think the fact that we've had 3 very entertaining seasons in a row
Yeah.
is testament to that. And just going back to kind of like on these games, there was one game I just wanted to point out here, and it was Oxford 3, Morecambe 1. And I think that was the game where Alex Goran got injured and went out for the season.
Yeah.
30th of October. It's a long time ago, isn't it? And I think that was the game where he got he got injured, and we never saw him again for the rest of the season. He became this living legend of a player. He became this like kind of ultimate godlike figure that would instantly come in and fix all of Oxford United's problems, which is always the case when a player's not in the side. But that was kind of definitely, that was an area Oxford never really fixed. They never really plugged that gap, and arguably that's kind of became the weakest area of the team. And it became where me included got very pissed off with Herbie Kane trying to fill in that role. And I think that's where Oxford really ended up being very lightweight and beatable this season, is through that midfield area where we just didn't have the solidity of a player like Gorin in there.
Well, moving slightly ahead to the transfer window, that's what a lot of people were saying in the transfer window, is that's the area we need to move, because in the transfer window you had Blackpool regularly coming in for bids for Cameron Brannigan. They really wanted Cameron Brannigan, and they were willing to offer Jonathan Thornley as a sort of make weight in a deal, and then almost out of spite took Thornley back to Blackpool because they couldn't, they didn't get their own way. So that sort of left us slightly hamstrung. But you think the players we actually bought in January, we bought in Oisin Smith, which I'd forgotten we even had him until I did some bit of preliminary research on this, and I'm thinking, oh God, we did sign another Irish midfielder. But then again, look at the players we bought in. We bought in Brown, Marcus Brown, a good signing, and potentially be a good signing for next season. Wasn't really needed this season so much, and ultimately didn't really achieve anything. Bringing Baldock, come to him later, and then Kieran Brown didn't come in Dan, did he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, Kieran Brown.
Kieran Brown worked out sort of nicely at sort of round about that sort of time as well. But you sort of felt you could have done with that extra midfield player. You could have done with someone. It's a shame that Jamie Hansen never got fit, because you kind of feel like that might have been a role for Jamie Hansen to sort of sit in there. But
I just want to say this because I did miss it at the start. There were obviously loanees that came in, were Nathan Holland, Gavin White, Jordan Thornley, and Herbie Kane, and then Brown came in January. Hansen kind of like throws the squad out of balance, really, because I think that was why Robinson didn't really want to bring in another central defensive midfielder, because he was thinking that like he might be able to just, if Hansen got fit, he might be able to just sort of fudge it with him in there. But then again, there's players that he never tried in there. Like, I don't know why he didn't try Anthony Ford in that position once or twice to see if he could do a job. I don't know. It was a weird one. It was a weird one. But so, just to say, we're roughly at kind of like the halfway point. You've talked about the players came in. Halfway in the season, which is kind of like New Year, we beat Wimbledon 3-0, and we were 5th in the table. And you've got to think going into New Year, we were all thinking this is going to be, an absolute banker that we're going to be.
We were thinking playoffs, automatics, if things go well in the second half of the season. And then on New Year's Day, the wheels came off a little bit.
Yeah, they did. It started with a very lackluster 1-1 draw against Cheltenham, which is a game we really could have lost. I remember Taylor missed a penalty, didn't he, in that game? It was one of those really crappy games that you were just hoping we would like nick out, but we didn't. And then we went on and had two really, really poor away games against Lincoln and against Wickham. And it was really where the middle of the pit, the team got exposed quite a lot in those games. The 4-3-3 system, without Thornley, who was like keeping Seddon on a leash. Without Goran in there, you really felt Oxford were a real light touch, and teams were really, I remember Lincoln especially, mowing through us time and time again. And that could have easily been a lot more than a 2-0 defeat. Wickham kind of did a Wickham Wanderers on us, and just kind of, you go 1-0 down to Wickham, you're in for a long afternoon, and we were never going to get back into that game. And then we got to this Sheffield Wednesday game, and this Sheffield Wednesday game was it was a fantastic 3-2 win at home, but it was where Robinson kind of like stumbled upon this 3-5-2 formation.
Yeah.
which is more by luck than judgment, I feel. And it was again through Wednesday, really carving us open in the first half of that game. We were only 1-0 down. We managed to kind of get away with it going in 1-1 at half time. Second half was a lot more even, but we played this 3-5-2. We found a way to get a second striker in there. Winnall obviously got his one goal of the season in that game, and it was a wonderful win. The next game was that 7-2 game, which you talked about. And then we had a 1-1 draw with Wigan. If you remember, if you forget the goal we scored in that game, go back and watch that goal, because that is one of the most brilliant team goals you'll ever see Oxford United score. I might put it on the screen now, but it was basically just a incisive move all the way up the pitch, one touch passing, and I think Taylor scored it. It was a brilliant team goal, and go and check it out again if you've forgotten about it, because that was arguably the goal of the season. And then we had another really like frantic 3-2 win over Pompey. Did you go to that game against Pompey?
I don't think I did actually. No, I don't think I did. I think I saw it at home, sort of like just sort of watched it on iFollow. But it was the next game though that sort of like the Accrington match. That's the one that sort of like that is the embodiment of all Oxford United's flaws this season. That's we go there, we go 1-0 up, and then so we don't go 1-0 up. We go over there and we have a load of chances, and then they score from the edge of the area. They have a ton more chances, which they miss, and then they get a late goal. And you just sort of feel like that again. You're sort of thinking, we've been on good form coming into that match. You know, we've been sort of fight and positive, and suddenly the glass jaw hits again. You know,
yeah, and you just kind of think. I remember in the end of that game, just before they got the second goal, Taylor inexplicably missed a header from like 2 yards
out or something.
And you just kind of think like if that was a Wigan or if that was a Rotherham, they'd get that goal and they'd just get a 1-1 draw, and they'd just be like, we were crap today, but we got a point and we're out. You know,
it's not going to get matches in the course of the season when the team does play crap. It just sort of like, for whatever reason, they're just not like the races today and they don't play well. But you just sort of feel like that, just sort of like, again, maybe we'll touch on it later, but the number of goals we've conceded from outside the area, whether that's like an indication on the keeping situation or the fact that we don't have a defensive midfield player who clears the second ball away. But when our defence clear it, it drops very handily to someone who sort of chances their foot, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's very easy to blame defence. It's very easy to like say we can't defend and then look at the defenders. But really, for me, it is that midfield. It is those the Kane, Brannigan, Sykes, whoever Henry's injured for a bit. Whoever you put in that midfield just didn't do a good enough job of closing down those sort of particular areas. And yes, you know, centre backs could have done better with the header, but I just think that the defending as a team from Oxford was just sloppy, so sloppy throughout the whole season. And I don't necessarily think that is. You look at the centre backs, and you look at the defenders, and most of them you would say had good seasons.
Yeah,
like McNally, you know, Thornley, Moore, Long, Kieran Brown. I don't think any of them have any fault with any of those players, but we just continually shipped really soft goals all the way through the season.
Well, look at the last goal of the season we conceded. It comes from a corner in, we head it out, and it just drops to them, and they let him come in again. So it's just there
still might be a deflection on that. I don't think I've looked at that goal.
I've seen that once, and basically that ball spun, you know, so well. Jimmy Anderson would be happy with the way that ball swung into the net, but blimey.
Right. This little period that just now, this kind of third quarter of the season, really. I mean, Oxford were fourth after this. So we'd even like improved on that fifth position. Some great wins in there. You know, a couple of defeats, you know, 3-2 to Bolton at home, but that was an excellent game. But really, this is kind of where we saw Taylor and Baldock partnership. And this was almost like kind of like where it was the most hopeful time of the season, really.
Well, Baldock came in, and as good a season as Taylor has had, and, you know, he's been a fine player for Oxford, otherwise he's been at the club. Baldock looks a class above him in terms of striker. He really looked like the difference. And I'll touch on injuries maybe again in a bit, but his injury was one of the main turning points of the season, because at that point, the two of them were having such a good partnership with each other that he just sort of felt like saying, you know, they look like we're going to score goals with those two up front. You know,
Absolutely.
Even create half chances, we're going to take them.
Injuries started to catch up with Oxford. There was the one real start of like the key injuries that's really hampered the back end of the season. Started in a real crappy 1-0 win against Crewe, where Kieran Brown got the winner, but that was where Elliot Moore got injured, and we didn't see Elliot Moore for a number of weeks. And we really, I do feel we missed his presence at the back as well as like McNally did in there with Brown and with Long. I do feel we missed the captain, Elliot Moore, and I think when he did come back, he did make a big difference, scoring in that game against Sunderland. But I think we can't ignore the Cambridge Oxford game, the Oxford 4, Cambridge 2, and to anyone who's not an Oxford or Cambridge fan, these are the two biggest rivals, aren't they, Robert? Oxford, Cambridge. We hate them.
I mean, it's up there. I mean, Real Madrid and Barcelona. That looks like a nice little friendly tea party.
Galatasaray, Fenerbahce, Boca Juniors, River Plate, and then there's Oxford.
The battles that were taking place on the outside Oxford were epic, and it was just blood floating all across the river.
That's a joke to anybody who doesn't realise. Anyway, we'll try not to do many jokes because one, we're not good at them, and two, people don't seem to get
How's
them.
that French player we got called Zidane?
Never heard of him. This was the game where Oxford kind of celebrated the life of Joey Beauchamp, where where it was known as the Joey Beauchamp game. Oxford, we thought it would be one of those games where the occasion would overshadow the game and Oxford would end up losing, and they nearly did, with Sam Smith celebrating in front of the Oxford fans.
That was a weird one, wasn't it? I mean, it's kind of irrelevant at the end of the day, but you're thinking, why the hell did Sam Smith react like that? I mean, you thought, read the room, Sam Smith. I mean,
he did apologise, so that's kind of like puts it to bed. But like Oxford did come, and Oxford won the game, so that puts it to bed as well. But I mean, that news. I mean, that news absolutely floored me of Beauchamp's death. I don't know how you felt about it, but for me, that was just like, we beat Charlton 4-0 that day, didn't they, when they announced it? And that was just so, I couldn't almost believe what I was hearing.
Because suddenly you start seeing stuff on Twitter, people sort of like talking about it before the news was officially confirmed. So you knew it was going on, but it's just a horrible story. I mean, he's comparatively a young man. He's still got a young family as well. And it's a shame that Joey Beauchamp's life didn't pan out the way it could have done effectively. It's a shame that he had these demons that he wasn't able to overcome. It feels a bit trite talking about it at times, but you just say it's a shame. Joey Beauchamp is a man who brought pleasure to thousands of Oxford United fans over the years, and it's just a real tragedy that his life ended the way it did. That's, I think, and the age of him as well. He wasn't sort of like, when you sort of see players in the, much older, more established who pass away, it moves you, but not someone who's still is still comparatively a young man. He sort of really came out the blue, and I think he did knock a lot of Oxford fans for six.
And I think that it's a kind of sombering reminder, really, that you put footballers of your club or any club on a pedestal as being these kind of like celebrity figures in your life, or these larger than life figures, and you just assume that they're like wonderful careers and then they're going to have a wonderful life off it, but you kind of forget that they are human, they do have the flaws, and when you take away the thing that they've done all their life, which is play sport, and they can't do that anymore, that's when the really difficult things happening. And obviously I don't know the ins and outs of it. It's me just speculating and
speculating really.
And I think just all in all, it's just so, it was a great send off. Robinson's words were great. Peter Rose Brown's words were great on the day. The fans were great. The send off was great. And I think that we both enjoyed Joey Beauchamp as a footballer growing up. We grew up supporting Oxford through those 90s. He was very much part of those teams that we loved going to the Manor Ground to watch. And there was so many great memories where him as just one player in your team got everybody off this, he got everybody invested in. Every time he got the ball, the crowd roared. The crowd expected something. The crowd thought Oxford were going to get a goal here. And he almost single-handedly kept the hope alive for Oxford in games. When you had Joey Beauchamp on the pitch, we always thought we could beat anybody, especially at the Manor.
I think I said this before, but there's a story in Southgate and Andy Woodman's book a few years ago where they're sort of talking about youth, but they're playing youth team football, playing for Crystal Palace. They're playing Oxford United, and Beauchamp was on the pitch, and he absolutely destroyed them. They sort of said, like, in comparison, Southgate looked like someone who might make a professional footballer if everything sort of panned out right. There was no doubt in anybody's mind how good Joey Beauchamp was, and it's just a question of where he would end up with his talent. But yeah, it's well, the whole thing's just terribly sad, really. That's all you can say.
And luckily for us, he ended up at Oxford, and again, that, you know, we'll always have those memories of what a great footballer he was, and we're never going to forget him. And you know, he was a massive part of supporting Oxford United growing up for me and for you. And you know, but we move on from Beauchamp, and the other bit of big news that sort of happened around about this time in the spring, in the summer, might have been a bit earlier, was everybody's moving to Kidlington, Robert. Everybody. Oxford United was finally going to get out of the dump car park wind tunnel of a ground, the soulless hellhole of the Kassam Stadium, and maybe we might get a new ground at Stratfield Break.
Yeah, and as someone who lives in Kidlington, you're seeing quite a few with the local elections going on at the moment. Just starting to see a few bits and pieces flying around about this. People being pro, people being against it. And I will say, any person in Kidlington who is against the stadium being built, I have complete sympathy for, because there are legitimate concerns of building a football stadium there, and the club needs to work to overcome those concerns, because you know, there are genuinely, you could be building this football stadium, it's a disruption to the area, could potentially cause problems, and the club needs to do a lot of work to try and win over people and, you know, try and sell the positives of the move. But by the same token, we want to be at the Kassam Stadium. The Kassam Stadium is a whole. I mean, as much as we've been there 20 odd years, and we've had good times at the Kassam Stadium, we've had enjoyable matches, we've had some good times over there, but it's never felt like home. It's always just felt like it's just where Oxford United play football. And as you know, it's telling that all the chants are about the Manor grounds, London Road, you know, up the Manor. It's just nothing about the Kassam Stadium. So you do sort of hopefully, and also gets for us Kassam out of our lives completely. If we can build this new stadium, that can finally become a home for a generation of Oxford United fans.
I got a hot take.
Go.
Firoz Kassam is the greatest owner Oxford have ever had. We'll move on, and we'll ring in our favourite song, which is the final countdown. And we were going into this final run of games. Oxford were in 4th place. We know how it finished. We know we finished in 8th place. We know we were the side that kind of slid down. And unfortunately, we hit a bad patch of form at the wrong time, married in with the fact of everyone else around us was really good. And we ended up missing out on the playoffs with a stupid amount of points. But it is what it is. And we did slide down out of there. And really, we talked about key injuries with Moore going down in the Crewe game. And this is where we started to see 2 games in a row now where we lost another 2 key players. Marcus Brown, in a 3-2 defeat to Pompey, scores a brilliant goal at the start of the match. Then he gets injured with a different injury to what he had before, by the way. Wasn't the same injury, so don't need to blame Robinson for that one. But we didn't see him till the very end of the season. And then Oxford 4, Burton 1 in probably the best first half of the season, with Baldock and Taylor and every attacking player just running riot, looking amazing. And 4-1 up at half time. And then at the start of the second half, I thought Baldock is a shoo-in for a hat-trick. A couple of minutes later, he sat down very innocuously on the sideline, goes off, and we never see him again in an Oxford shirt for the rest of the season. And that was a killer blow to the promotion aspirations, I think, Robert.
You've said all along that all sides have injuries, and that's true. But I think this season we have been hampered at a lot of times with injuries to key players. Alex Gorin, James Henry. You think how James Henry has been a big key player to Oxford the last couple of years in the number of matches he's won for us, a number of key performances. We've been without James Henry now for a long time, and even when he came back, he then suffers a horrible facial injury. So we're probably not going to, that's
Well,
all.
and a lot of people will forget this. James Henry scores the winner against Doncaster, winner against Sheffield Wednesday, scores a hat-trick against, I think, Lincoln at the start of the season. So, yeah, massive player that we didn't have.
Even someone like Jack Stevens, he gets glandular fever or whatever. I think it was glandular fever.
Yeah, it was.
That he was out for several weeks, and it's still possible he's not back to the player he's now. I read at the time people were saying it takes a long time to get over it. So I don't know. I don't know what his condition's like at the moment, but you sort of feel like you wonder if that might affect him. Elliot Moore gets injured. We know then Sam Baldock was the absolute killer because he's in such great form at the time. But we've lost key important players for long periods of time. And that's ultimately, as we've got players who can replace them, but they're not quite as good. And ultimately, that's probably did what cost us. There's a couple of times where if Baldock had been playing, we might have got a draw. If James Henry were playing, he might have been able to create something that magical and get that extra goal. So, but like you said, other sides do have injuries and they do have to sort of compensate with it. But by the same token, injuries can derail you, and I think to a degree we were derailed by it.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, it becomes a bit annoying because it's like it becomes the excuse in every single game. But looking back on it now, you can't really hide the fact that they were some key injuries at the wrong possible time. And after that Burton game, Oxford got a very, very lucky 2-1 win against Shrewsbury with Brannigan getting the penalty. And at that point, we were fourth, I think, in the league. And I really, just looking at the fixtures, it looked like it was quite not quite easy, but very doable that we'd be able to get into these playoffs without even having great form coming into it. We got a very fortunate 1-1 draw against Ipswich. With McNally getting that last minute point. And again, it also felt very good then. But then we hit these three games that just kind of, and it's only 3 games. It's the only time all season where we lost 3 games in a row, but it completely derailed our season. And they were all narrow defeats. 1-0 defeat against Plymouth. We had chances. Disappointing referee decision, which went against us. Plymouth get a good goal. Oxford can't get back into it. Morecambe away. Oh my God, this game will haunt me forever. How we didn't win this game. Oxford could have scored 7 in this game, and we only scored 1. Morecambe had 3 shots on target, scored 2, capitalised on bad, sloppy play at the back, and then a combination of good defending and woeful finishing, wonderful goalkeeping meant that somehow Oxford didn't get at least a point out of this one. Sunderland at home, Robert, I'll let you talk about it because you went to that game, but it was another one where we could have quite easily won it.
Yeah, I went there with other brother Alan and nephew Alan as well to go and watch it. And it was an enjoyable game. And, they take the lead, we, score, and we have chances. And it's a good competitive match. And right up to the end, because our nephew Jack has never seen Oxford win ever. I was thinking, well, at least he's going to get.
We'll just say he's one of the games he's went to, and I think he's only been to about 4. Was the Wigan 7-0?
That was his first ever match. Poor little sod. Yeah, that's child cruelty taking him to that one. Anyway, but we're thinking, we're going to get a draw. That's not too bad. And then suddenly you're noticing, hey, who's barking that Sunderland pair on the right ring? Ah, shite. And then it's gone. And mind you, Sunderland did make a habit of that because they were in that sort of run that we got on in previous seasons where suddenly they're the side who are getting the late winner. They got 2 or 3 late winners in a row where they sort of turn points into 3 points and sort of get, and that's what's helped them get into the playoff place this year.
Yeah, I remember that actually. I remember that the Plymouth game is one of the very few games of the season I didn't watch, but looking back at the highlights, certainly we had our chances. That one was going into the very last minutes of that game where Oxford's game had finished, and it was like, well, okay, I think we were still 4th or 5th, and it was like, okay, that's fine. We've kind of got away with that a little bit. And then Wednesday get a 97th minute winner. Sunderland get a 95th, 96th minute winner. And all of a sudden it was like a day that was okay, turned into a bit of a bloody disaster. And then also in those 3 games as well, three wonderful goalkeeping performances. Like,
Yeah.
Plymouth's keeper made some great saves. Morecambe's keeper, the save he made against Winnall was unreal. And then Sunderland's goalkeeper with the save he made against Brown was also just an unreal save. And it just felt that, like, I mean, I don't know what Robinson, that was kind of like, if we did have luck earlier on in the season, that all came back against us in those 3 games as well. But that was really it, really, wasn't it? It left us with a mountain to climb. It left us with, all we could do was win out from there and hope for the best. And we got a win against Fleetwood, even though we tried to throw the game away. We got a good win at home against MK Dons, which was one of the great Gassam Stadium nights of the season, I think, with Billy Bowden. That second half performance was excellent. Billy Bowden getting the winner, crowd went nuts. But then, Rotherham United away was always going to be a tough one, and they were too good for us, really. And Oxford just couldn't handle Rotherham in the second half. And that Doncaster game, the less said about it, the better. But so it finished with a bit of a whimper, really. I mean, it's disappointing. It's disappointing, really, to not get in the playoffs, and you can understand fans' frustrations at that, and seeing it as an example of that we've regressed. And I think we have touched on it throughout the video. But do you want to just give me some final thoughts on what you think Oxford did well this season, and ultimately what they didn't do very well?
I think we have been entertainers this season. That's what, like I said, that purple patch in the middle of the season, we beat Gillingham, we score 7, and we score 4 against Charlton, and we're getting goals and we're looking exciting. We're scoring we're scoring good goals as well. We're looking at, I think that's one of the things. We've been an entertaining side to watch for most of the season. We do have a goal threat up front. I mean, certainly when fit, we've got a very good forward line going forward, attacking wise. And we would, like I say, go back to the start of the season. We thought we might just get the playoffs. And actually, we've just fallen slightly short, like 7 points. But, we've sort of fallen narrowly short of our target of finishing in it. So it's not been too bad a season in that respect. I suppose the only thing that you'd say against us would be the fact that our defensive record. The fact is we have conceded a lot of goals. We've also conceded a lot of goals from outside the penalty area, which always seems frustrating. You accept that's going to happen, but a lot of goals we've conceded have been sides picking up the ball and just twatting it back towards the goal and getting and scoring a worldie. And also the fact you do get the impression we have, like I said, the glass jaw, in the sense that so many times we've taken the lead, we've looked good, and then we've had a setback and we wobble. And you think that's happened time after time after time. So that's an area that Robertson needs to look to improve. And I'm sure he knows that. He's not a fool. He must be looking to try and see if he can get something in to try and make us a bit tougher. But we're always probably going to be a side who attacks more than we defend. We're always going to be a side who sort of be like, we'll try and win 3-2 as opposed to 1-0 effectively. But it's, that's definitely the area we need to work on. We need to get some more centre halves in, and we need to get some more central defensive midfielders in as well, just to add a bit of solidity to the back.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I mean, the one thing for me is just I think that one that was evident in a lot of Oxford games this season is the fact we were quite good for 45 minutes, and then for 45 minutes we were quite poor, and then like maybe a side kind of like gets to grips with us a little bit, knocks us out of our rhythm, and when we were knocked out of our rhythm, we could never really recover. I mean, one of our subscribers called Oxford like Panic FC, and I can really see that. It's a really good observation, because there was certainly that Rotherham second half. Oxford just completely lost their composure. There was like the players couldn't pass the ball around. They were just knocking it, clearing it into gaps. It was coming straight back at us. And it was like no one could just get a foothold in the game. And I'm surprised at the likes of someone like, and I thought he had a great season, but the likes of Brannigan couldn't galvanize the team a little bit more and get them to just say, look, keep the ball on the ground, keep playing football, keep knocking it around. Because if Oxford United can't play football and can't knock it around, we're very easy to play against.
Yeah.
Like in that second half against Rotherham, Kieran Brown is taking long throw-ins deep inside our own half. I mean, if you've got an Oxford United side doing that, I think you're winning the battle in that game, because that is not tactically how we try.
Yeah, especially as they're very slow looping balls coming in, which is like a little heading practice for the centre halves.
And I don't think we score a lot of I think the football we play is excellent, but I don't think we score enough crappy goals. Like,
Yeah.
and that's difficult to say because we scored like 80 goals. That's really churlish to say, but
Well, bear in mind the last one we scored of the season basically bounces off Billy Bowden's chest 1 yard out from the line.
I know that, not to say that we haven't scored those goals, but like the amount of scruffy goals we concede from like balls bobbling around in the penalty area and someone just pokes it in, we don't really seem to score those types of goals enough in the season. But again, that is like, if you score 80 odd goals, it's clearly not a problem going forward. It's clearly more of a problem keeping the ball out of the back of your net the other side. But what are your views on Robinson? What are your views on Robinson? Just, I mean, you've touched on it really enough, but any final thoughts, anything you didn't say before, anything you want to say now, anything that where he irritates you, to the point where you want to throw your radio out the window?
There are days, I've said to you at the game on Saturday, there are some times when you sort of feel like the assistant manager say, I'm sorry, Carl is bound and gagged and is in our dressing room at the moment. He's not going to be saying anything for 48 hours. We think that's for the best. But no, Robinson is our manager and he has done a good job as being manager of Oxford United. And this season's going to be an interesting one. As always, we're going to have some changes. It looks like Cameron Brannigan will probably go. You'd expect Cameron Brannigan to go. We've lost of the loanee players will not come back, you would imagine. And then it's a question of what do we replace them with,
Well, who, I would say, rather than what, because I imagine
yes.
replace them with footballers.
I mean, that's a bold prediction, but, you'd like to see that happening, I mean, we certainly had players before that you couldn't describe them as footballers in all consciousness.
Would you subscribe to more wingers?
Oh God, Carl loves the winger, doesn't he? Blimey. I mean, I do think it's sort of like it gets to a point that we're thinking, come on, Carl, can we have a central defensive midfielder now?
Yeah, right. And I think both of us will say, for me personally, and I know you agree with this, Baldock is if we can tie up the signing of Sam Baldock, then that is a fantastic signing for next season. One where we can go into next season with two genuine goal scorers up front, with Marcus Brown in the side as well. And I think just those three alone gives Oxford a lot of reasons to be positive. We're probably going to lose Brannigan. We might lose more. Sykes has already gone up the dude. The likes of Hansen, the likes of Winnell have already gone as well. And we'll see what Robinson can do and who he can tie up moving forward. But I think that Robinson is hanging his hat on a 5-3-2, on the 3-5-2, 5-3-2 next season. We saw that in the final game. I really think that is what he's going to do moving forward. And I think that if you get two good strikers in there, then I think that really makes Oxford such a harder side to play against, because one of the biggest problems for Taylor is he's so bloody isolated when he plays 4-3.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Yeah, that sounds perfectly fair, Ian.
Right. I think that we've chewed the fat on this season long enough. There is undoubtedly things that we've missed. No doubt about it, that there are things that you wanted us to talk about that we didn't talk about. So rather than writing it in the comments, I'm going to put Robert's home address up on the screen so you can send send all your letters.
Envelope, yeah.
And phone number and email address. But no, look, obviously leave all your comments down below. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for supporting the channel. I'm still on the fence about it. We might come back with another video doing player ratings, but I actually didn't expect this video to go as long as it did. So you might have to wait a little bit longer for that one.
September.
But that is nothing else for me to say. Robert, say goodbye to the loving folk.
Goodbye, loving folks.
There we go. That's it. Thanks for watching. Hit like, hit subscribe. We'll be back very soon with more content. Adio, mofos.